Hi, I'm Squeaky Clean Dave. You've got to admit one of the most innovative things over the last few years in the window cleaning trade has to be the Uni-Valve, but they don't always last forever. This is an old one I've got, and it came from an old pole that I was using. When I stopped using it, I changed it into a spray pole. So there's been all sorts of chemicals gone through this. There's been TFR, Ubic, biocide, and even hypo has gone through it in its time. But these aren't made to take chemicals, they're only made to take water. So it doesn't always work. It still works, but not particularly well. So it would be great if you could service this. Fortunately, Exceed Innovations have now come up with a Uni-Valve Service Kit. It's a great little kit, this. It's got everything in it you need to service the Uni-Valve. So we'll have a look at it and see what you get in it. Empty it all out. So you get a little tube of grease, you get the plunger, the gear, a new end cone in case you break it taking the old one off, and a little fat O-ring. So that all comes inside the service kit. So you've got everything you need there to service your Uni-Valve. So let's take this apart. You can do it while it's still attached to the hose. You might find it easier to take your hose off, but I'm going to do this one with it still attached to the hose, save cutting the O-clips off, and just show you how it's done. To do this, you're going to need a service kit, and you're going to need a pair of O-ring clippers. Now, these aren't particularly good. It will do it, but you have to squeeze them right apart. So you use these for getting the old Uni-Valve apart. So to get the Uni-Valve apart, there's two little lugs either side of the Uni-Valve, and what you have to do is get your O-pliers into those little lugs. Just give it a little squeeze. You don't have to be really hard with it, and twist, and you'll hear it just click. And what that does, that has fetched those two little lugs from out of the hole there. Once you've got that apart, you can pull it apart. Now, if it won't come apart by hand, you might have to grab it and pull it apart with the pliers, and that gets all the old one apart. So that's brought all the old insides out. Now, if you have a look at the insides of this one, it is all held in really tightly actually, but you can just see the spring there. Now that actually doesn't look too bad at all, and the spring is working really well. Now these springs, I had a word with Steve. There's been a bit of controversy lately about the springs. People have been saying that they haven't lasted as well. Well, Steve has had these springs actually galvanised. So that was the first step he made. Then he had them zinc coated over the top of the galvanisation. Now the problem is, if you do use chemicals, it can eat off that galvanisation, and then it will cause the springs to rust. Now you might say, well, in that case, why doesn't he use stainless steel springs? Well, he did think about using stainless steel springs, but the problem with that is they're not as springy basically. I can't think of the exact words he used, but basically they're not as springy as the steel that he used, the spring steel that's galvanised. So they won't last as long. They are more chemically resistant, but they won't last as long as the springs that he uses that are galvanised, and that's why he's been using those. As I said, this was from an old pole that I had for years, and it's had loads of chemicals go through it, and that spring's still working no problem at all. He actually said to me, you can tell how old this one is by the colours of it. And he had these black and red ones made back in 2017, so it gives you some idea of how long that has been in the pole. So, to put it back together, what you do is you start off with your plunger. Now, if you look at your plunger, you'll notice there's this little red collar here. That has got a little nipple on it, and there's a little nipple on the grey end. So those two nipples have to be in line, and put them that way around. Now you've got your little tub of grease, your little syringe of grease, and you just need to put a little bit of grease just above, you don't want loads, just a little bit of grease just above the spring, and then wipe that round. It's just silicone grease, it's not going to hurt you, unless you're allergic to it I suppose, but if you think you might be, wear gloves. So, bit of silicone grease around there, make sure the two little nipples are in line, and then there's on the end of the Uni-Valve logo and on the end of the Exceed logo, there's a little square hole which holds it all together. That then has to go in line with that, and that pushes down inside it. You can feel it won't twist once it's down inside it. If you go to the wrong place, it just won't go down. So it has to go down in line and it goes in. Next, you have your gear. So again, with your gear, little bit of silicone grease on there, a reasonable amount on there, and wipe that right round your gear. Right round the gear, all the way around. Now this gear also has grooves in it. So there's one along there, a little groove. Now that groove, when you put it in, it goes with the gear side towards the body of the Uni-Valve, and that groove has to line up again with that little square notch, so that pushes in. So that sits right in level with the end there. Now a bit of kitchen roll or a rag or something, give your hands a good clean off, and then you have your O-ring. Just sit your O-ring on the top, and just a tiny little bit of grease. I don't think it's necessary on that, but that'll just help that lubricate up. So you got a little bit of grease on that. So once you've got your O-ring pressed right in, what you do then, where the groove is missing out the top of the cap, that lines up with the little square hole there. So just push that in. Now this might be quite tight. Sometimes they take a bit of pushing, but that one just pushed straight in and snapped into place. If you don't push it in quite square, you might have to twist it, you might have to use your nips just to twist it into place. And there you have your brand new Uni-Valve. Works perfectly. That should last me another 7 years. Now if you're interested in the Uni-Valve Service Kit, you can get them from Exceed Innovations. They're £15 plus VAT for a service kit, and there's everything you need in that except for the nips, which you're going to have to provide yourself. So I hope you enjoyed watching this. If you did, make sure you hit the thumbs up button. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.